Okay, so I thought this would be a good jumping off point from the last video where I was talking about, Lumen Gaia and the planet's relationship with the peoples and all that. And this isn't actually the order that I did on the blog, but I just thought, considering what I was talking about, it would make more sense if I just jumped into a few of the kingdoms. There's these major kingdoms across the world, and they're all called kingdoms for the most part, but a lot of them aren't actual kingdoms. It's just what they're called. But I wanted to start by talking about one called Evangeline Kingdom, and I'm starting with Evangeline because the first story that I wrote in the series of short stories takes place in this kingdom. And so if you haven't read the stories, this might give you kind of some idea as to what's going on in the background here. And if you have read the stories, then this just provides more context, I guess. But anyway, Evangeline Kingdom is also known as the Blue Kingdom. Their color is blue on the map. And they are also known as the Harvest Kingdom. And that's because it's a very agriculturally focused kingdom. It's and it is an actual kingdom. Like, it's ruled by a queen currently. There's no voting, there's no democracy. It's just whoever's born next in line, that's who rules Evangeline Kingdom. So Evangeline, it is a commoner's kingdom. They have a very I guess controversial and notorious reputation to the rest of the world. Because of, partially because of like xenophobia and stuff like that, but violence and slavery and overall just a very nationalistic approach to everything. It's very military focused, very nationalistic, very like proud of the Evangeline people. I guess I'll start by saying the whole shtick of this kingdom, like what I was talking about before in the last video, of commoners can't really compete with the magic people naturally. You know, if you talk about natural ability, 1 versus 1, a human versus elf, and that elf knows a couple spells, that elf's gonna win every time. So unless that human digs up some land and kills an animal and makes a bone spear or something, they don't really stand a chance. And basically this kingdom, that's their whole theme, is that it's for commoners, it's by commoners, and their biggest fear basically is the Fae and the Gaians getting the jump on them and gaining supremacy or whatever. Evangeline Kingdom wants, they don't want a world without Gaians and Fae because, hey, those people are exploitable, but they want they do want supremacy. They want their people to be on top now and forever, and they are so scared of magic, and they should be. They're so scared of magic that they go to these big extremes to make sure that, their kingdom stays safe from magic. And if that means, killing and enslaving all peoples who not only know magic but even have the potential to use magic, then so be it. And that's kind of their whole thing, and what they're known for is anybody that can even potentially learn magic, like the Gaians, and especially Fae, who just know magic, right off the bat when they're born. Evangeline Kingdom, they step on these people like hardcore. If you're Fae and Gaian in this kingdom, you are a slave or you're dead. Like, that's just how it is. As for the commoners, I mean, you could look at this kingdom, and go, wow, what a horrible, wretched dystopia. How does anybody exist in some place so hardcore and nationalistic? And well, the thing is, if you're a commoner, life is good. Life is not bad to you. In fact, if you're, let's say, if you're a human male, let's say, in in Evangeline Kingdom, like, you pretty much got it made. You got nothing to worry about. Like, the government just by default is going to take care of you. Like, you're gonna have an education, you're gonna have, like, you know, you're always gonna be fed, you're never gonna go hungry, you're not gonna be stupid. Like, the kingdom wants to take care of you and make sure that you are the best person you can be, because you represent the kingdom's chosen people, which are humans. And as for other commoners, commoners being people that can't use magic, they are also welcome in this kingdom. Legally, they do have the same rights as humans are, but there is kind of this air of, like, you're aware that you're kind of a second-class citizen if you're a commoner that isn't human. Say you're a troll, a Roshava, a dwarf, you're alright, I mean, legally, but there is kind of this attitude in society that you'll face of, you might kind of have to stay in your own communities because there's a lot of humans that think that you're not quite on their level, and you know, not really in a violent way, but in more of a condescending, you know, you're lesser than me kind of way. So if you're any kind of commoner in this kingdom, like, you're alright, like, life is pretty damn good. And then, of course, because of that, the commoners that do live in this kingdom will argue that, well, the Evangeline Kingdom is obviously the best because look at how good we are living. Like, we do not go hungry here. We are all educated, though the gap in wealth is really small. Like what are you guys complaining about? Life's not so bad. But then, you know, at the very same time, you can look out the window and every fae and every Gaian that you see is in shackles and chains and bonds, and they're working themselves to death for nothing. They're slaves. They have no freedom. They can't own property. They can't marry. They are completely at the mercy of whoever owns them, and a lot of the times that's the government itself. So what I said earlier about the kingdom being the harvest kingdom, it's very agriculturally focused, and of course, to profit in any way from a large agricultural, you know, industry, free labor is a good way to do that. So the kingdom itself uses slaves. They're just owned by I guess by the queen, really. They would be in her name, and they just work the government-owned farms, and food is the biggest export. They provide food for a lot of the rest of the world, actually. So, I mean, you could think of a million reasons to go to war with this place and say, this place is wretched, like, wipe it off the map. Oh my god, they're nasty, violent, you know, slaveholders, holy shit. But they do actually provide a lot of the world's food. So even other nations that are made up of fae and Gaians can't really say shit to them. They might rely on those crops. So anyway, that's basically Evangeline Kingdom in a nutshell. There's more details I've written about that if you want to learn more. You're gonna have to read the page because there's a lot to know. But I guess I could talk about like diplomacy a little bit. That's kind of important. So there, pretty much everybody else in the world, like your laymen, hate this kingdom. I mean, even commoners in other empires are like, man, fuck Evangeline, like, they are awful. The you know, nationalism and the xenophobia and all that, like, oh my god, what an awful place, what an awful government, what awful people. So they are pretty loathed worldwide. There's nobody, you know, who isn't a human that is itching to go to this place. You know, people don't just, you know, you don't cross the border into Evangeline unless you're human, and you don't care about everyone around you that isn't just like you suffering and seeing that every day. And people born in Evangeline Kingdom usually don't care. And you see a little bit in the story I wrote called Monster by Moonlight. Again, that's the first one that I wrote of the short stories, and you see a little bit of that attitude where the main character and his family, I mean, the main character grew up in this kingdom, and he's just so used to the idea of slavery and oppression against people who aren't just like him, that he's just like, yeah, you know, he doesn't fight against it or anything. So until he gets older, he kind of gets exposed to, you know, the rest of the world and people from other places, and then he kind of starts to see it. But when the story starts, the way that his family is kind of represents the average, you know, Evangelite family, the average Evangelite person. They are very much like, you know, the average family, which usually means they're farmers, but they're, when I say well educated, I mean like, you know, there's a healthy dose of propaganda in there when they're educated. So what they know is what the kingdom wants them to know, but it's enough to be considered like well educated or whatever. So anyway, back to diplomacy for a second. Yeah, so they have enemies for sure. I mean, this kingdom is so antagonistic that it makes enemies all the time. A lot of other kingdoms don't want to mess with them, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Evangeline basically has the nukes. They have these giant dragons that they've tamed that are unique to them, that can just wreck shit, like almost as bad as a nuke can. So I've wrote about that before. I won't get into it here, but that's one reason. And the second, like I said, they provide food to a lot of the rest of the world. And just militaristically, if that's a word, they are very powerful. So anybody who goes up against them, they're gonna have a problem on their hands, because even though Evangeline Kingdom, they're not very technologically advanced, they're actually they got this whole medieval aesthetic. When you walk into the kingdom, it's all like castles and knights and swords and bows and catapults and stuff like that. And that's mostly because this thing, I mean, I could get into it, but there's this thing called the Nymph Pact, where basically the world's nymphs come to each kingdom and they say, hey, sign this treaty that says you're going to limit your technology, your use of technology, and, you know, advancement for the sake of keeping the environment healthy. So Evangeline Kingdom hasn't signed the Nymph Pact, but they kind of like have their own version of it, where they do respect the earth a lot, actually, and they do limit their technologies. But the thing that they do to kind of, as a loophole, they do use iron and they do pollute a lot, but it's all outsourced. I talked a little bit about Zareen Kingdom in the last video, but Evangeline is one of the kingdoms that outsources all of their dirty industry and all their bullshit basically on Zareen Kingdom. And Zareen Kingdom has the technology and the infrastructure and the military to keep the nymphs off their backs, basically. So even though, you know, a lot of Zareen's industry is on behalf of Evangeline, they're the ones making the swords, the shields, the blah blah blah, and exporting it over, the nymphs don't give Evangeline a hard time about it because they don't really realize that's what's going on. They're going straight after Zareen, but Zareen can handle it. So yeah, Evangeline's land is pretty clean, and their environmental practices are clean, and the nymphs are pretty happy with them. They actually respect the nymphs a lot, and that's the only fae that aren't enslaved in this kingdom, is the nymphs. And there's this whole religious aspect to Evangeline Kingdom, where there's this religion called Lindism. I won't get too much into it, but there's this religion called Lindism, which is basically the whole shtick of this religion is that humans are dominant and everybody else is below them because this and this reason. And a lot of people take this, you know, faith to heart, and they use it as an excuse to keep other people's down, but then also use it to say, oh wait, nymphs aren't like other fae, you know, because Lindism says this and this, and they're different because of whatever. So the kingdom does take care of the nymphs, and the nymphs do, you know, they don't attack this kingdom the way that they do with other, you know, kingdoms. So you know, wow, they're environmental, and wow, they really care about the earth, and they're like, you could say that, and then it's just this oppressive hellhole. So I mean, there's no real, you know, you could go the Tolkien route and say, oh, there's the Dark Army, or there's the, and that's fine, and that's cool in fiction, but this isn't really that situation. Like, Lumen Gaia doesn't have any kingdoms that are like evil or just, you know, I don't think there's any leaders that exist in this world that fuck shit up for the sake of fucking shit up, you know? It's usually down to money, just like in the real world, it's down to money and power. Or just being stuck in a bind and doing what you have to do to survive in some shit-ass circumstances or whatever. So I think that's all I have to say about Evangeline. I mean, you can read more about it, but that's the whole basic gist. Is they're very military focused, very aggressive, they're powerful, nobody wants to mess with them, but they're also important for the world's economy, so you know, they're like the kind of the last major bastion of slavery. There's more about, you know, slavery in the rest of the world of moving Gaia, but I'll get into that later. But Evangeline is kind of the big, like, where they're like vocal about it and they're proud of it. Like, other kingdoms are kind of like, yeah, well, they're, you know, we have slaves, but, you know, Evangeline's like, hell yeah, we got slaves, man. We got, you know, fuck they and fuck Gaians and fuck anybody that isn't us. Like, we are totally proud of that attitude we have. So yeah, that's Evangeline, and I'll talk more about the other kingdoms too, but that's the one I wanted to start with because it kind of sets the tone for how the rest of the world reacts to them and how the rest of the world operates, you know. Yeah. Okay, bye.